Good morning and a good Ner Shabbos. We are on Mem Beis Amud Beis 42b. Yesterday, the Gemara discussed, somewhat of a tangent, the Gemara discussed the legions of Nebuchadnezzar. And in that context, the Gemara said, commenting on the wording of the verse, at least in one opinion, they were such strong people that when they would go relieve themselves, they made heaps and heaps. On that topic, the Gemara went on to say that these people who are strong, producing all that kind of volume, it wasn't indicative of any unhealthy intestines. They were strong. But someone else, ordinarily, if someone is producing too much volume, then they should get themselves checked out. There must be an issue. That's what the Gemara said. That's the literal level, right? From there, the Gemara went on to say, from here, the Gemara goes on to say as follows. So, and as I mentioned yesterday, the Gemara itself gives itself a spiritual interpretation. So on the subject of relieving yourself, the Gemara goes on to now discussing relieving yourself of doubt or worry or stress. So the Gemara goes from a literal relieving yourself to a sort of metaphoric relieving of yourself. So you can see how the Gemara itself is interpreting itself on a level that's deeper than just a literal. So 3 lines from the bottom of the page, the last word in the line. Daiga. It's a pasuk in Mishlei, book of Mishlei, book of Proverbs. The verse reads, Daiga belev ish, if there is a worry, there's some anxiety in the heart of a man, yishachena. The literal translation of yishachena, actually, as I see it on the side, says yishamchena, which would make more sense, means to like bend it.
Yes.
To bend it.
Bend.
Yeah. But the Gemara's interpretation is somewhat different. And the Gemara here is giving 2 different methods of advice, or perhaps 2 sides of the same coin of advice, and how to deal with daiga belevish, worry and doubt and anxiety that a person might feel. So Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi were both discussing this verse. Chad Amar once said that this last word, Yishamchena, should be read Yisachena, changing the shin to a sin, which means to divert, medaita from his mind. Think about something else. That's the first piece of advice. Think about something else. Sachena medaita, you should push it away from his mind. In Tanya, when he discusses the fact that every human is created with the capacity for self-control, in his words, in chapter 12, quoting from earlier sources, Hamoyach shalat alalev, the mind has the capacity to control the heart. That is to say, a person can decide to do the opposite of his urges. That's relatively easy. A little harder to say something that's opposite to his urges. He wants to say one thing but says something else. He wants to say something not nice but controls himself, or even better, says something that's nice. And then the third level, which is the most difficult, is to think something that is not in the mood of. Much more difficult, right? As you put it when you spoke to Kislev, you are not your thoughts. And you could decide to think something else. It's much more difficult, obviously, because it's much more internal. But in theory, a person can think about anything they want. Yeah. So advice number 1 is, there's a thought that's causing you anxiety. Step back for a second and remind yourself, you aren't your thoughts. So this thought is causing me anxiety. So think about something else. Introduce another thought. Rather than fighting it, and trying to argue your way out of the thought. Thank you. Rather than fighting it or trying to argue your way out of the thought that's bringing anxiety, just completely think about something else. Completely think about something else. Not fighting it and not trying to fix it. Just think about something else. Yeah. This is also true, by the way, of actually over there he's talking about thoughts of sin. Thoughts of sin. Sometimes we feel like we want to fight the thought of sin. And all you really did was you made it bigger. You turned it into a whole monster and you're fighting it, and now it's getting the upper hand on you, and you're just completely thinking about something else. Like almost envision in your head that the thought exists here, and there's another thought that exists here, and I'm looking at this thought, and when this thought comes in, you're going, la, 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 literally, like figuratively in your mind. Like imagine yourself doing that to the thoughts in your head. Because again, you're not your thoughts. So that's advice number one. There's a thought of something that's causing worry. Don't think about it. Right? It's the same thing we said yesterday about or a couple days ago, something about someone feeling angry. The information that someone hit me is not what makes me angry. It's the fact that for the next half an hour, I'm thinking about how terrible it is the guy hit me. That's made me angry. It's the thinking, not the actual act. If during that half an hour I thought about something else, I would not be angry. Because I didn't think about it. Now, obviously, it's very difficult to control yourself and think about something else when someone just hit you in the head. Right? But
internally, it's doable. Externally, it's
right.
Well, to avoid thinking about something, you could just, I don't know, for me, like when I try to sleep at night,
Yeah.
and a million thoughts, like don't think about it. I literally think of nothing.
Right. So it's a doable thing. It's very difficult, especially if you're going to introduce, like if you're talking about a thought of sin or a thought of worry, then introducing a Torah idea is definitely has that extra value. Is introducing a godly thought into your mind by your choice, because no one's stopping you. You can think whatever you want. So that's advice number one.
Sorry, so the difference between with a shin and a sin?
Bend, yisachena, means to like divert, to push away.
Yeah, no, with the shin is to bend.
Yeah. It could be that, not just it could be, it's probably that in the literal level. Let's look up Mishle Yud Beis Chafei. Even like the literal level, let's say meaning bend, is understood by either of Ami or of Asi to mean divert your attention. That's the meaning of bend. I mean, what's the meaning of bend? Exactly, that's perhaps what you think. Yud Beis Chafei, it's chapter 12, verse 25. Let's say they translate it in the Chabad translation. If there is a word in man's heart, okay, here he said, let him cast it down. That's how he translates it. I saw Steinsaltz translate it as bend it. Here he translated let him cast it down. Here in the Chabad translation. Yeah, I mean, Rabbi and Rabbi are discussing what the translation of it would be. And one translation is divert your attention. See how Rashi commented on the verse there.
The first
Yeah, Rashi translates to mean let him divert his attention. I'm just telling you, that's how Steinsaltz translates Yishachena, to bend.
It's almost a physical thing to actually.
Yeah,
turn
yeah. Let's see. We'll look back at Steinsaltz's translation. I'll put it up in the text here. 1 second. Just a sec. Here. Yeah, Yishachena. Let him bend it. That's how Steinsaltz translates it. He either translates as let him cast it down. It's being translated, whichever you translate on the actual literal level, Rav Ami and Rav Asi is explaining that to mean divert your attention. So that's advice number one. The other one, Rav Ami and Rav Asi are discussing. This one said divert your attention. The other one said, last line, Yisachena la'acher. Speak it out to someone else. Share it. And that's the other way to deal with something that stresses us out. So you could read this, understand two different pieces of advice. One, divert your attention. The other one, to talk it out. Yeah, but perhaps it's actually two stages. And if the first one doesn't work, go to the second one. Meaning, there are certain levels of worry that you can simply divert your attention and it's out of mind. It doesn't make us worry anymore. When we get there, we'll deal with it, and we put it aside, and we think of something else. And there are certain stresses that are so deeply connected to our essential state of being worried about our children, something, God forbid, they're going through, God forbid, a health crisis of some sort. So now it's not just like an ordinary worry that you can just, okay, you know what? Why am I overthinking about this? Let me think about something else, and now I'm not stressed. It's the kinds of stress that's not going anywhere. I'm suggesting that the Gemara is telling us 2 stages.
There's 3, right? Because there's the Gemara, and there's the 2 opinions of Rav Aminasi.
Rav Aminasi is the 2 opinions in the Gemara.
It says here, Rav Aminasi dispute the
That's right. They're in the Gemara. What do you mean by you mean the verse itself? Okay, so what's the verse itself?
The verse itself is to bend it, but they're disputing
Which would mean
that.
No, God forbid, they're not disputing
That's
it.
what it says, Rav.
No. They're disputing about it. They're not, God forbid, disputing the verse. They're disputing as to what the meaning. Hold on a second. They're disputing about what the meaning of the verse is. It's not a third opinion. It's not, God forbid, a third opinion. Well, okay.
I'm confused because it says Rabbi Amin, Rav Asi dispute the verse's meaning, and then
they don't dispute.
Say what each of their.
Okay, it doesn't mean. Okay, it doesn't mean they're disputing the verses. God forbid. They're disputing what the meaning of the verse is, not disputing against the verse, saying the verse is wrong and giving their own opinion.
I meant the verse's meaning.
Right. So there's no 3 opinions then. What's the verse saying that's different than these 2 opinions?
Well, because the verse says to bend.
What does that mean? Bend what?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
They are interpreting. Rav Ami and Rav Asi are interpreting what bend it means. That's the point. Not following?
Okay, I understand.
Follow? The verse gives a word, but what does it mean? So it's 2 opinions to what the verse means. That's not following. Okay, good. Yeah. What does the verse mean? Okay, so again, so you could read these Gemara as a dispute, right? As Rabbi Steinsaltz right there. That's a dispute. If Ami says, or one of them says, divert your attention, the other one says, talk to someone else. Right? So I'm suggesting that's not a dispute. They're just speaking about, like, it's 2 stages of a solution, one building on the other. The first thing is to divert your attention. There are certain types of stresses that it does not work. There are some stresses that we create in our mind. They're real because we create them. The solution to that is divert your attention. Stop thinking about this thing that you invented in your head. But then there are certain stresses that we didn't invent. God forbid we're stressed about our children's health or family members' health. This is not a stress that we invented. You can divert your attention, but it's not going anywhere. It's truly an anxious-inducing issue here. Objectively speaking, not just something I created in my head, which is also a real issue. Creating something in your head is a real issue, right? And people spend a lot of money going to therapists, as they should, to be able to successfully divert their attention, right? To be able to successfully think about things that don't stress them out, or learn how to cope with the fact that there's an issue of stress, but I don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to drag me down, right? That's the point. It's the first advice. Divert your attention. Think about something else. Then comes the second advice. Perhaps with the stresses that you can't share, you can't just divert your attention. They're just there always, because it's so intrinsically connected to our state of living. And there comes the advice: share to another. What does share with another help? It's a funny thing. In the first advice, we're saying that if you think about it too much, it actually makes it worse. So divert your attention. And in the second piece of advice, where you're sharing with others, you're also making a big deal out of it. You're talking about it. Never mind thinking about it, you're talking about it. So how does this help? So perhaps the word here is daiga. Daiga belev ish. If daiga means worry, if there's a worry in a person's heart, not if there's a problem in your life, but if there's a worry in your life, it's not the same thing. A problem in your life is a problem, and you should deal with it. Being worried about the problem, that's already something else. We're not solving the problem. We're solving your worry about the problem. You're being anxious about the problem, the daiga, the worry. Now, a lot of times, if not most of the time, the true daiga, the true anxiety, the true worry in our heart is because we feel like we're doing this alone. That's to a large degree, a lot of the times, That's the root of the worry, not the problem. The problem is a problem. It's a real problem. Whether it's a parnasa problem, a family, a health problem, a God forbid, or nachas problem, whatever the problem is, it's a real problem, and you have to deal with it. The daiga part, the worry and the anxious part, is very often connected to the fact, or a large part of it is connected to the fact that you feel like you're handling it alone. To which the Gemara says, so speak to someone else. And you share the problem with someone else. And the person doesn't solve your problem. It doesn't say, talk to someone else and get a solution. Although maybe that's on one level what the Gemara means. Talk to someone else and see if there's a solution. But a lot of time, to a large degree, it's not what the Gemara is saying. Perhaps the Gemara is simply saying, just talk to someone else. And you don't feel like you're alone. Now you're less worried about it. The problem didn't go anywhere. But the daiga, the stress about it, has been massively reduced because you feel like you're not alone in dealing with it. Because you spoke to someone else. And the other person feels, hopefully, responds with an empathy, good listening ear. So beyond just the advice that a friend might give, much more importantly, it's just hearing you out and making you feel like you're not doing it alone, which tells you something else. If you are the person that someone is sharing your worry with, what should your response be? So, especially men, our instinct is to solve the problem. Someone's sharing a problem, solve it. That's our the inner engineer that likes to fix everything. But before we do that, we have to first make the person talking to us feel like they're not alone in whatever stresses they're going through. I mean, listening. I know, right? Yeah. The spouses are better at that. But that's what it is, right? That's what it is. You want to know that you're not doing it alone. And your friend wants to know he's not doing it alone. But that's what a good friend is, It's even in good things, by the way. Someone shares a good piece of news with you. So what's your response? Oh, yeah, you know what happened to me also? The other person wants to share his good news with you. What are you throwing in your good news for? That's not the time for this. Just celebrate the good thing. That's all. Guy tells you I achieved something. Oh, yeah, I also achieved that once. We're not talking about your feelings now. When you get to your feelings, you'll talk about your feelings. We'll talk about his now. And the same thing is true in a worry. Someone tells you about, you go to a shiva. People make this mistake of thinking that when they bring up their own past experience with loss, it's going to make the person sitting shiva feel better. It's a little bit of a mistake. Because now the conversation became about you. It's not about you. You just listen to what that person has to say. If they want to say nothing, they say nothing. So what? They ask you for how you dealt with something else. Now you talking about your own experience is not about you, but about them. Right? So it goes both ways. When you're feeling worried, you share with someone else. And know that when someone's sharing their worry with you, it's just about them sharing. So they don't feel like they're doing it alone. Because to a large degree, that's the daiga part, the worry part. You're not solving the problem, but you can take away the worry of them feeling like they're doing it alone, because they're not. Someone else who knows and someone else who hears and listens and empathizes. Very important Gemara.
Sure.
Yeah.
Relatable. I noticed my daughter doing that Shabbos table often in conversation. I just became a fan for you. I think it's from a need for people to share in your experience by sharing their own experience. And,
Right.
oh yeah, say.
I also went through that. Yeah. If the other person feels very listened to, then you can say that.
Well,
but that has to start with, it can't be your initial reaction. The person speaking feels like you didn't even listen to what I said. You're just waiting to respond to me about what you talked about.
well, it just speaks to narcissism.
Yeah.
Honestly.
My first meeting with a couple that whatever, they met at my table. So so they came this problem that the usual first year married couple things. So she's talking about what his mother does to her, And then he says, oh yeah, you know what your mother does to me? And I'm like, hold on a second. Whose mother are we talking about now? Is it a competition of whose mother hurts who more? Or is this a unit that wants to deal with an issue? First we'll deal with your mother, and then we'll deal with your mother. That's the core of the problem here. Not the whose mother is worse. Like it balances out because they're both bad to each other. Like, what? that's not how this
I
goes.
surrender. You're right. My mother.
Okay, good. Now we're together because our mothers are equally bad to each other.
Misery.
We've equalized our misery, you know. That's the point. She's having an issue, both of you deal with it. He's having an issue, both of you deal with it. Unrelated to the other issue and not putting on any scale.
Yeah. Girls just want to be listened to. How was your day is not a.
Yeah.
They just want to be listened to, and guys want to solve problems.
But the truth is that guys, we also want our problems to be heard. We want to fix everybody else's problems. Our problems, we want people to listen to. Right? So remember that when someone else is telling you their problem.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, this really starts a new subject in the Gemara, and we're going to get up to more. We'll get to more on Monday, but let's just begin anyway because we have a few more minutes. So let's start. So the Gemara, the Mishnah said that the Kohen who's anointed for this purpose of giving a speech to the people before they go to battle, he tells them about Goliath and Shoivach, how that was the champion of the opposition, and we come with the championship of God, and therefore we're not concerned. We march forward. Now the Gemara says, the Kol Kach Lama. Why is the verse so detailed in its guarantee that God's going to go with them? So let's pull up the verse for a second. It's in Parshas Kiseitze, beginning of Parshas Kiseitze. So what chapter would that be? Give me a chapter. Sorry? 20? Okay, so beginning of Kiseitze, but chapters is how we find it on Chabad here. Okay. He says, here's the verse. What verse number is it?
4.
Verse 4. Not too far. Here. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. It's quite a lengthy description, as opposed to God is with you. Not just with you, goes with you. For the Lord your God, that goes with you to wage battle with you over your enemies to save you. As opposed to just saying God's with you. Simple phrase. So why so? Oh, thanks.
Sorry.
Why so?
No, that happens.
That's good. So Gemara asks, why so lengthy? So why so elaborate? So it says the Gemara, and we'll expand on this on Monday, but we'll just translate now. Hashem, because God, the name God, V'kol Chinoyov, and every other, alternative name of Hashem, top of 43b, Munachem Ba'aron, are resting in the ark that goes with them. What's the answer? What's the Gemara's answer here? Why is it so elaborate? Because all the names of Hashem go with them in the Aron, right? It's written, the ark has the tablets in it, and the Torah, so it has every possible name of Hashem is in there, and that's why it's so elaborate in its promise. It would seem that the Gemara didn't answer anything. It just made the question bigger. The question was why the Kohen has to say every name. Answer: because every name of Hashem is in the ark. Well, why is every name in there? Why is that relevant? Right? The Gemara only answered one step, not the next step, right? The Gemara answered that the Kohen says all this stuff because all that's in the text. Why is all the text going with them? Just God go with them. The same question we asked about the Kohen speech could be asked now. in turn about the Torah. We'll get to that, God willing, perhaps on Monday. Let's just read a little bit more. And likewise, it says, this is a little earlier, when Jewish people go to war with the Midianites, where it says, "Vayishlach oisa Moshe," Moshe sent them, Elef lamata litzva, 1,000 to each like camp for each for their legions. Oisam, them, ve'es Pinchas, and Pinchas. So it says them and Pinchas, and it says them twice. First, it says Moshe sent them the legions, and then it concludes them and Pinchas. So the second time them, you would think, is the same them described earlier, which is the legions. But obviously, every word in the Torah is precise. So it could have just said Moshe sent them the legions and Pinchas. Why repeat itself them and their legions? So the them must be other people. So therefore, says the Gemara, Oisam, the them, the second them, is Sanhedrin. This refers to the high court, the Sanhedrin. And Pinchas, Zem Meshuach Mokama. Pinchas is a reference to the Kohen anointed for the purpose of inspiring the people before they go to battle. The verse continues, the Kli Kodesh, Moshe sent with them the holy vessels. This is a reference to the ark and the luchas in it. So from here, this simply speaking, this is what the Gemara is trying to get to. That when they went to battle, the ark and the tablets went with them, and thus all the names of God are with them, and therefore the Kohen says all the name, and so, therefore the Kohen elaborates about the names of Hashem. Right? But the verse continues, and the verse goes on to say that Moshe sends with them the trumpets that blast. Elo shofars, these are the shofars. Okay? This is the end of this little discussion. And from there, the Gemara is going to get to a discussion about Pinchas and his background. But just going to add to the mix of our discussion, setting ourselves up for Monday, in addition to the question of we asked earlier, which is what's the Gemara adding? The Gemara says that the Kohen gives his whole speech about all the names of Hashem and is elaborate. Why? Because the Aron goes with them and the Aron has everything in it. Okay, well, why is the Aron going with them with everything? And then the Gemara said, cited to a verse which indicate that the ark went with them. And in that same verse that indicates the ark went with them, we actually added more stuff. The Sanhedrin, the high priest, and the shofars. So not only is this elaborate Kohen speech, not only is the ark there with all the other things, now we threw in more things going with them. Right. So what's the meaning of all this? And just to teaser, cliffhanger, I think it's connected to what we talked about way earlier, that when the king's kingdom is at stake, everything gets put on the line. Nothing held back. We don't calculate. If we're going to war, because our very survival is at stake, the entire treasury is opened. Everything is expunged. Because if you don't win this, what's the point of anything? So everything gets sent. And that's perhaps what the Gemara is indicating here. Hashem sends along everything when the Jews are in battle. More on that, God willing, on Monday, Be'ez Hashem. Have a good day and a good Ner Shabbos. Oops.